I'd like to call the meeting to order for the regular council meeting for Tuesday, April 18th. It's starting at 7 o'clock. Approval of the agenda, the recommendation would read.
That the agenda be approved as circulated.
Someone to move that. Move seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Public input. Public is permitted to provide comments to council on the item shown on this meeting agenda to the time that applies to speakers. Name and address, please.
Nancy Maloney, 1724. I didn't put the mic.
Is her mic on?
Malware Bracken. Okay. Nancy Maloney, 1724 East Road. So, as a resident of the non-pathway side of East Road, I was very interested in seeing the traffic study report done by Chris White's company. Many East Road properties, such as ours, have no access to a crosswalk, which makes crossing East Road as a pedestrian highly hazardous for most people, and actually impossible for some people. This report, which I've read, provides data that verifies what people who live there already know. Speeding has become the norm, which obviously has an impact on pedestrian safety, especially when attempting to cross the street, and especially during very busy traffic times, during certain months of the year and certain times of the day. So my question is, does council plan to implement some of the report's recommendations and possibly request additional comments?
Nancy, this is public input, no questions at this point. We're just providing comments on things that council on the agenda.
Okay, so save my questions for the end. Okay, will do.
Any other public input? See that adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 4th, 2023. Recommendation would be.
That the minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 4th, 2023 be adopted as circulated.
Move those minutes. Move seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Is there any business arising from the minutes? No. Move on to legislative reports. Ride hauling and intermunicipal business license bylaw. Report dated April 14th, 2023 from Ms. Elrick, our Chief Administrative Officer at Spanish. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. So this report is before council along with the accompanying bylaws, just in order to update the bylaws for our intermunicipal business license for ride sharing. This was an initiative that was introduced in late 2019, and Anmore, along with 22, I think, municipalities in the Lower Mainland joined this regime. The City of Vancouver administers the program and also takes care of the allocation of funds. For Anmore, it doesn't mean a lot income-wise, but in the future could, and also the data could be valuable for us as well. 3 municipalities now wish to join, which means every municipality has to redo their bylaw, and we do going through council, which is why staff would recommend for us to continue along the path, because we don't know when the next chance to have that come up again. So the recommendation this evening would be that Anmore Intermunicipal TSN Business License Agreement Bylaw 678/2023 and Anmore Transportation Network Services Business License Bylaw 679/2023 be given for second and third reading, and that staff be directed to provide public notice of the bylaw's potential adoption at the regular meeting on May 2nd, 2023.
Someone to move that? Move seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. It's actually, I remember when this came up, it's quite good that Citibank was taking this on. Again, Citibank prefers on charter, so they also have a staff to be able to facilitate this. Move on to 9B 2023-2027 Anmore 5-year financial plan. Report dated April 14th from Ms. Martin, Manager of Financial Services at Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a quick budget info session that gives some highlights from our Finance Committee meeting for the budget for this year. Just gonna turn one of those lights off. Doug, you can get one of those switches?
Wonderful.
Whatever this side is. There we go. All right. So these are just some highlights for the 5-year financial plan. The municipal requirements and our operating capital, water, and solid waste budgets. We have two new grants, our active
Ms. Martin,
transition.
can you bring the mic a little closer?
Oh, sure. Can you hear me now? So we have two new grants for this year. The active transportation grant of $500,000 and the building great communities grant of $1.73 million. The Great Communities grant came in after the Finance Committee meeting, but has been added to this bylaw. So our requirement is to adopt a 5-year financial plan before May 15th annually, including public consultation, and then we adopt the tax rates bylaw after the 5-year financial plan, also before May 15th. Our initial draft budget was presented to the Finance Committee on March 9th and referred to Council for consideration after discussion. One member of the public attended that meeting. The pre-approved capital budget was presented to the regular Council on February 7th. There was one question from the public. That input was received and discussed. And then today we're looking for the first 3 readings of the financial plan bylaw and the tax rates bylaw to be considered today with adoption on May 2nd to meet our legislative deadlines. With this proposed budget, we saw overall a slight decrease in revenue for operations and an increase in expenditures, with expenditures going up 5.5% and the fixed asset levy overall going up 2.8%. When we look at that tax impact, a lot of that comes down to some shifting in revenues. We have increases in investment income and we've moved some of our MRN grant to capital, so this is just operating. We saw some increases for salaries and benefits, mostly due to CPI inflation, which came in December to December Vancouver CPI at 6.4%. And then we saw some staff adjustments that occurred last year, and this will be the first full year for those staff. Overall, we had a change in staff of 1.086, so not too much change. And then we have our 6.4 inflation factor applied overall to expenditures. However, we also decreased expenditures in other areas and overall just saw about a $12,000 difference from year to year. So your total expenditure changes were $149,000 or $150,000, and your capital asset levy change was $76,000. This will also go on the website when we're done. So this just shows your capital asset levy for your asset replacement levy, which is now at $1.2 million annually, and the water infrastructure levy that comes from fees remains at $285,000. We also did not increase the water fees this year. Spending on the capital grant for the COVID grant this year, we have some carry forward from 2022. And then we have a couple of new projects for this year. We looked at designating some COVID safety equipment and fixtures in the hall when that's ready to go. And we have some annual computer improvements. There's some capital projects as well remaining on the books from last year. Those can be found online later, but this just gives us a list of what we're still working through. And then capital projects moving forward for 2023. We received our active transportation grant where there is a village cost of $214,286, and our MRN grant, which we are slowly building. It's a small amount, so we're building it over 5 years to be able to do some MRN upgrades on the roads. So we put aside a little bit each year. And then some other various capital assets as we go through. Again, the detail of these budgets are on the report to the Finance Committee in very full detail if you'd like to go online and look at those. So again, we have some additional capital projects that were noted at the budget session with the Finance Committee. The water operating budget, of course, our biggest cost is our purchase of water from Port Moody, but our water rate remains the same for this year with the hope that we will come in balanced again. It looks like we came in balanced last year as well. We are continuing with our PRB station upgrades. We're moving to number 2 of 3 PRB upgrades as we go. We did not add any extra money to the budget this year. We just carried forward what we had left in the books from last year. We're continuing to adjust water meters to property lines, and we've done that as a 3-year project. We're in year 2. So 2022, we carried forward some work, and then we put aside our 2nd year value as well. We're also looking at starting to look at SCADA through cellular, which Mr. Boyd can speak to if you have any questions later, and then some auto flushers for the water mains. The solid waste operating budget, obviously our contractor is the biggest cost of that. We saw a small increase this year of $9 annually for the solid waste budget. If we're talking about our reserves, where Anmore has been really great at putting aside some reserves so that we can continue to operate without worrying about debt, without worrying about other factors. We have some statutory reserves, non-statutory reserves, and some deferred revenue, a lot of which we're using pieces of to get through the hub build this year so that there is not a cost to the taxpayer. So this deferred revenue we'll be using this year for the hub. And then we'll also be using some community amenity contributions, some of our restart grants, etc. And if you have any questions, we can go through some of that later, but for now, we'll just go back to the report. Sure. So for our report to council, our purpose is to present a bylaw to adopt the 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan first. Under section 165 of the charter, it states that the municipality must have a financial plan that is adopted annually before the annual property tax bylaw is adopted. Financial plan will set out the objectives and policies of the municipality for each of the funding sources, the proportion of total revenue proposed to come from that source, the distribution of property value taxes among the property classes, and the financial plan will also set out the proposed expenditures, funding sources, and proposed transfers. As mentioned, the draft financial plan was presented to the Finance Committee on Monday, March 9th, and it was moved and seconded that the Finance Committee refer the draft 5-year financial plan to Council for consideration. Some 2023 budget notes. The municipal tax revenues increased by 7.63% for operating and 6.4% for capital. The change in overall assessment values for Anmore this year is 5.97% increase. The consumer price index, which everybody has seen the last few months, at the time of budget was 6.4%. BC Assessment Property Tax Review Panel reduced the 2022 assessment roll by $1.64 million, so we just received those supplementary changes for last year. And what that does is it reduces our tax allowance for last year. And when we set our rate from tax year to year, it changes the assessment change slightly. So that assessment change due to that supplementary roll was 0.22% change from our Finance Committee meeting. But the requisition remained the same, so we're not asking for additional tax dollars because of that. In general, from 2023 to 2027, we're looking at our inflationary rates to remain at 5% for 2024, and then slowly go down to 4%, 3%, and then hopefully back to 2% for 2027. We will start the repayment of the long-term loan for the Anmore Community Hub in 2024. And we expect that our investment interest will also start to increase over 5 years as our inflation stabilizes.
Do you have a recommendation?
I do. The recommendation is that council give first, second, and third readings to Anmore 5-year financial plan bylaw number 682/2023, and that council give first, second, and third readings to 2023 Anmore tax rates bylaw number 681/2023.
I guess I'll do that. Move second. Open up for discussion. Councilor Richardson.
Okay, so I'm fine with the tax increase. That doesn't bother me. I'm troubled with some of our capital expenditures and for the benefits here. I'm going to say why. I read the sort of financial stability or sustainability council directive policy 61, and you have to have value for your money, and you have to be transparent with respect to strategy and plans. And I'm kind of going on that principle. And I'm concerned because the capital reserve drops to $4.7 million from nearly $8, and that's already including $2.5 million grant, a $2.5 million loan, and $1.2 million from the CIC. So it's taking a big hit. And when I look at the budget proposal, like the capital asset levy, to me, which is quite important, covers off all our sort of capital assets. And that's based on 2 reports. That's Van Strooks in 2013. I encourage people to read it. And there's an asset management investment plan 2017, which I think is actually a brilliant report. And actually the follow-on reports to that are equally brilliant. And as part of this budget, we're going to review the capital asset management plan. And I think that is a key thing to do. It's been 6 or 7 years since it was last done. And a lot of the things have changed and the costs have gone dramatically up. So I'm worried about spending a lot of capital on new capital unless we really understand what the old capital is doing and what the expenses and replacements are. So that's the primary bit of my concern, and it's only about $25K to do that review. So my thinking is it should be held off until then. So specifically, I have some issues. I bring them up, all the time. I'm against brine. I've looked at brine left, right, up, down, trying to find a benefit for Anmore, and I cannot find it. I've talked to Mawson Creek from an environmental perspective. I've talked to Port Moody. I've talked to Coquitlam. None of them reduce costs. Anything they have is a marginal benefit. And I don't understand why Anmore is going to spend some $400,000 on a brine system when we have the best roads by far in the Tri-Cities. Like, I drive around in the winter, I check out what roads are.
Councilor Richardson, we're getting into something that we already did at the previous meeting, which was at our finance committee meeting, which again was unanimous. We don't have, you're getting into an area where we don't have professional people here. Mr. Scott
Johnson.
Mr. Donaldson isn't here to respond to any of these. He did at the finance
He did not.
committee.
He
Please
did.
let me finish.
I was talking,
And I'm just correcting you. I'm out of chair right now.
so you can cut me off.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're getting into something we cannot even debate at this point in time. We've already debated it at the finance committee meeting. We had all our professionals here to be able to answer all those questions. It was a unanimous approval that this budget came forward for approval. And so we're here just to ratify that approval. That was an open meeting. All that data was provided on the website for the last month and a half. And have we received any questions in regards to any of that? Or? No? So I'm just trying to assist you a little bit in the fact that we cannot debate this. I don't have any of that information in front of me.
Okay, there is no debate. Fair enough, it's going to pass. However, I'm not going to vote for it.
That's fine.
And I'm saying why, so that
That's
people
fine.
understand.
That's fine.
That's my, I believe, right to do so.
Yep.
So what you're saying is a complete waste of time. And from the finance committee, it was specifically said, recommended to council for consideration. It didn't say recommended to council for automatic ratification. Had it said that, I would not vote for it. Like, we're spending money, $1 million on new capital infrastructure, brine, dump truck, a roof over the trailers, with no plan on how long it's going to last, what the overall future is. And that's not responsible. So I'll done with my things. I'll post this online so people understand why I have my concerns. And on you go.
Any other questions or comments? I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. We'll now move on to the temporary mooring bylaw, Anmore Community Hub, which is 9C recommendation.
Thank you. This came to the last meeting, the first two readings. So the recommendation this evening would be the council adopt Anmore Community Hub temporary borrowing bylaw 677/2023.
So you move that? Move seconded? Any discussion? in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to new business, traffic operation and road safety review, report dated April 13th, 2023, from Mr. Boyd, Manager of Development Services. Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, as requested by Council, too sure exactly when, I want to say it was maybe 6 to 9 months ago, Council requested that staff go in and look at the traffic operations at East Road and Sunnyside. In particular, with a slant on any safety measures that might be implemented through this. So, staff commissioned ISL to go through and conduct an audit of the roadway. So via the audit, we also did some traffic counts, and we kind of took some information on where the roadways are at with regards to functioning as well, because the function of an intersection relies heavily on how safe it is as well. So that's why we have some traffic count data in there. So in general, the report really identified what we kind of already knew anecdotally, that there is speeding along Sunnyside Road and East Road. In particular, there were a number of speeding instances through the school zones at this point. There were 46 crashes in Anmore from 2017 to 2021. Of the intersections, Sunnyside Road and East Road had the highest number of collisions at 4. And through the recommendations of the report, the general recommendations were additional police enforcement. That's always a large component of any safety audit. It's like the more police presence you have, the better compliance you have to speeding zones. There was also conversation about introduction of street lighting at intersections. Again, visibility in intersections is an important piece of safety, and then increasing school zone visibility and increasing sightline visibility at intersections. Those are the general findings. One thing I would note is that we had a category A, which is the highest level of service you can have for our intersection, so we actually don't really have any traffic operational issues through the village, even during peak hours. So that was the main findings of the report. Within the report, there was no actual financial data provided. However, in the report to Council, I did do an order of magnitude cost, and I kind of think it would be around $500,000 to complete all the work that I suggested in the report. So if Council wanted to look at some of them, we could pick and choose what we wanted to do. And that's it.
Do you have a recommendation to receive?
Yeah, the recommendation for Council, I believe, was to receive the report. Council received a report dated April 13th, 2023, entitled Traffic Operation Road Safety Review, for information.
Someone to move that? Second, open for discussion. Councilor Reeves.
Okay, so a few comments. One, the school zone on East Road is not a school zone, it's 30 kilometers at all times. So that's incorrect in the report. My understanding is you're not allowed to have speed humps on MRN roads, or is that incorrect?
It's kind of frowned upon from TransLink. There's no legal thing saying you're not allowed. It's frowned upon. I can kind of give a technical reason why. The short version is that TransLink don't like to have speed humps. It's because, especially when they come towards traffic stops, bus stop, that people tend to get up, and as they get up and they hit the speed bump, it causes a safety issue within the bus.
And I question, how many collisions actually happen at night, or do you have that data?
I don't have that data. I have to go back and look. I'm not too sure. We did, just for council's information, we pull the data from ICBC data that we have access to. So I'm not too sure if it's as granular as the AM or PM.
And my last comment is, do you have the 50% percentile for the speeding? Like I understand.
Yes, we can get that. We actually did it manually, so we logged each piece of data and then did the analysis after the fact. So we have that.
That means there's in the median and the 50% percentile go up, because, you know. Anyway, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, just a couple of things to follow that. The camera or the speed sensor on the side was supposed to be able to record speed limits, does it? Do we have access to that? Because I think it went to the pack.
Yes, I believe Mr. Donaldson has tried to take data from it before. It's not as easy as we would like to, but I believe we can get it.
We also get council and staff get a monthly report from the RCMP, and it's usually, speeding is internal issues. That normally is what the issue is. It's usually brought forth, and it's not as bad as what some people perceive it to be, according to the RCMP. And the last comment was many years ago, probably 2010, we actually applied to put speed bumps down East Road. Before we actually had a three-way stop at Strong and East Road, and they asked they would not allow that. So we put a somewhat a little raised crosswalk across there. So,
Yeah, I can address that a little bit, but TransLink in the past was very much you shall not, and I think they've had pushback from municipalities. You know, when they have good information and get good data to prove that it isn't become a safety issue for transit users, that they will allow them to allow. They won't frown upon it. Let's put it that way.
oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, I did have some. Just curb bulges, bad for bikers. You know, if you're riding a bike and that curb bulge comes out, and then all of a sudden the car, it's directly a deal with the car. It's a safety concern for me. Also, I noticed there's a declining radius at the very bottom of Southside Road before it hits that First Avenue, that all day. Like it does this. Did that come up on the safety? Because I would think people go whipping down that road and then all of a sudden they got a tighter radius and a stop sign. How many accidents are down there? Is that kind of a hot spot?
I think we have that data in the report. Give me 1 second.
But it's not a concern.
Yeah, it was addressed. There was a point at Bedwell Bay and First Ave, Sunnyside Road, that the comment was to realign the stop control approach because of that, and also because of some of the visibility sections of that intersection.
Anyway, yeah, the big one was the curve ball. There's some safety issues with those providers. Call the question. All those in favor? Receive. Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to 11B, Fortis BC nominated charity. Recommendation of council receive the request to nominate charity in our community for Fortis BC for information. And we've talked about, Councilor Carter, you said you looked up and told me.
I did. I obviously I love to take advantage of things like this for our charities and not-for-profit, but I went into the website. I actually phoned and then they told me where exactly to go. And we actually only have 2 registered charities with Anmore addresses, and it is Friendly Forest and the Baha'i group. That's all that we have. So I also asked for history if we've done anything before, and we don't. No one seems to have any record of anything. Is that correct, Ms. Lord?
Yeah, through the chair, we did not find any past nominations for this.
I'm just wondering, I know that the fire department has a society which is a registered thing, but it would be registered between both Belterra and Anmore. So I'm wondering if we send, if we can maybe reach out to Belterra if they want to do one jointly for the Cessna volunteer. It's the association. It's the association. Yeah.
I have a similar question. It doesn't specifically say must be address located in the thing. It says must service that area. Like it's a bit vague for me on that.
Yeah.
So like Insight or the fire department or search and rescue, there's a bunch of things that could potentially they service this area, but they're not physically addressed to this area.
Correct.
I don't know how important that is.
Yeah, well, if we could get us, we'll receive this, and then staff could look into that for search and rescue as well as the volunteer fire department. That'd be great. Okay, so we have a recommendation of council to receive a request to nominate a charity, and we'll follow up. So there's someone to move that. Seconded. All those in favor? Very nasty. Mayor's report. I'm going to keep it very brief, and then we have a video. I was here at the rainy, cold Easter turnout here at the school, and Councilor Cryer was here, Councilor Webering was here. Anyway, it was cold, it was wet, and it was amazing how many people came out. I was quite blown away. Brooke, our community rep, did an amazing job. Joe from Public Works was here to help set up and take down, but it was really amazing. There was well over 200 people here, and that. It really blew us away, and it was cold and it was wet and it was coming down sideways. So a lot of kids that were wanting to get their candy. And it was really great seeing so many young families who are now making this a tradition in the community. So, and the second thing that we want to move on to, if we could hit the lights, we have a little bit of a video that we want to show you here. And this will be posted on our website.
Yes, yeah.
Sorry. Hold please.
Love that we're close to the lakes and
Sorry to pull that back.
I love the fact that you're kind of in the country, you're right in nature, but yet you're so close to the city and the amenities. Love that we're close to the lakes and to the mountains, the fresh air. I also enjoy the community. I like that there's lots of friendly people around, people get to know each other, walking your dog, and it just feels safe and private. I just love living here.
I quite often say that this community is the best of two worlds. We're living amongst nature, trails, lakes, wildlife, and we're very close to amenities. And it's just a fantastic place that you'd have a hard time finding it somewhere else. Our family moved to Anmore in 1978, and we moved into what is known as the Anmore home. My father was thinking to take the house down and build a new house. The house wasn't in great shape, and Hal Weinberg, the mayor at the time, decided that he would like to see the house saved, and my father then decided to donate the house, at which time that became the village hall.
We used that as our village hall for staff, et cetera, et cetera. But that building became more and more dilapidated over time and actually became structurally unsound.
It needed a substantial amount of work to be able to grow with the community. We could only have council meetings that only had 20 people in there. We weren't able to store our records because of the water ingress that was happening and the dampness.
We moved into the Atco trailers, which we've been residing in for a number of years. And those trailers, thankfully, really served the purpose pretty well. We ran our operations, our offices and staff out of the trailers, and then we used to use the school for our meetings, but couldn't always get the dates and times we wanted, so we leased 3 more trailers, and that became our village halls / chambers / everything.
We worked with actually at one point, clad them and make them all fancy, and I actually voted, I said no. I didn't want people to become complacent with using us. We as a community deserve something much better, and we also needed something that would bring the sense of community back.
It took us longer than we had hoped, but we felt that we needed to be extremely financially sound and that we needed to be in a position where the village could afford to pay for the building in its entirety without a grant or without debt, should we choose to do so.
We had about a $9-10 million infrastructure deficit. That didn't even include a new village hall, which is the road work and that. But we always kept our number 1 and 2 priorities for Sunnyside Road and the new community hub.
The concept of replacing the temporary trailers would make a lot of sense, but it needed to be funded. So in order to do that, we cut all the fat out of the operating budget as much as we possibly could. Unfortunately, we also had to raise some taxes and put away reserves.
The hub budget, which is a set budget, is close to $8 million right now, and there's about a $500,000 contingency on that. So we've gone to about $12 million in our reserve, so we can pay cash for this building. Luckily, the council and I have some pretty good relationships with senior governments, and we were able to secure a $2.5 million grant, which is amazing.
When it came time to actually replace the trailers, we didn't feel that replacing them with a simple admin building would be sufficient. If we're going to spend a lot of money on permanent assets. Those assets need to serve the village until they've essentially been depreciated to nothing and repay themselves.
Currently, we don't have much of an emergency center, and this building will provide all that, have all our supplies there to be able to facilitate any sort of emergency. We're going to be able to handle all our archives, and also we're going to be able to incorporate a bit of history as well, which was really important that this council in the design wanted to implement.
It really hasn't had a sense of a grounding for our community, which I think is really important. The house had some grounding, but I think having a community center, village hall, and a place for people to meet is really important. I look at that area as the heart of Anmore, where you've got East Road coming into Sunnyside. It's really the center of the community.
The hub is roughly in the geographic center of Anmore, and we wanted it to be something that the village residents could use. Not just use for their admin needs, not just use to pay their taxes, etc., or get information, but actually use themselves.
We're going to be able to host a ton of events. We won't be so weather dependent. If the weather's bad, people will be able to come. We'll be able to do Easter events inside. Same with Christmas. Our citizens will be able to enjoy much more engagement of the community, which is so vital. You know, the one thing that communities need is areas to bump into people. And we don't even have a coffee shop in this community to do that. This is going to enable this. This is going to be a hub where people are going to bring people together so that we can discuss issues, we can discuss concerns.
One of the biggest factors in getting this thing in the ground is that we've been in an unprecedented inflationary period. The cost of houses, commercial buildings, everything has gone through the roof.
We've given up a bit of size. We've also given up a bit of the fancy glazing, a lot of the awnings. We've given up a lot of the timber on the roof and soffits and stuff like that.
We committed to ourselves and to this community we were bringing in on budget, and so we had to change things. The design elements of the building were able to be maintained while changing materials. And we were able to keep the functionality of the building intact. We were able to keep the look fairly close to the original design. All this glazing back to here, that cost in here is more than 50% of the 400. So the overall presence on the ground will be very close, and we're making a beautiful building far cheaper. We've taken over $2 million out of the budget to get back down to where we needed to be. On the main floor of the building, we have a 4,000 square foot hall, which will have a patio deck off the west side facing Spirit Park. And that hall is going to have a dividing wall that can hide away, so you can use the full 4,000 square feet, or two parties can use the space if they don't need that much room at the same time. In addition, on the lower floor, we've enhanced the outside bathrooms for our events, for Christmas and Halloween and Monterey Days and all the things that we normally do down there.
I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be an opportunity for people to be able to plan more events and to book events and meetings, have that facility local.
I think in general, a sense of community. People are going to be proud of this in our village. People are going to want to come here and get involved in events. The one thing I will tell you with living in this community, you go through a period where you're involved in the elementary school, and that's where you usually meet all your friends and families and that. But as soon as you leave there, there's no reason to meet. We don't bump into each other.
There will be opportunities for people to, maybe showcase some of their art or their products or their business. Maybe there's some kind of a fair that can come up, and have an opportunity to see what other people have to offer amongst us.
I think it gives stability. I think it gives stability to this community as it continues to evolve and grow. It's important to look at the history. It's also important to look at where we are today. But even more important, we have to look at where we're going. And this community is going to continue to evolve and grow. And we really do need to have a place for people to conduct business, to have meetings, to have events. into community and meeting your neighbors and meeting your friends and family in a setting like that is huge. It's about time. It's really about time.
That was a hush.
So I think a big thank you to the Smurfs who were involved in that, and Bill Hitchens, who's musician, who's here tonight, who did a lot of the work on that and volunteered a lot of his time. Thank you, and the Weinbergs and that. So yeah, Councillor Trowbridge and staff that really put a lot of time into that, and it's pretty telling. It's a great story, and now that we're back on track, we're still planned that there'll be completion by the end of our, I guess, October 2023. So we're moving along quite quickly. Move on to council's report. Any councilor? Oh, councilor.
Yeah, I attended the very wet Easter egg hunt. Pretty hard to stand in between kids and free candy. They show up and they went in, they scooped it and they left. And there was lots left over for councilors. So that was a lot of fun. I attended the Kona open house, talked to some residents, looked at all the storyboards. There was lots of good questions, lots of good discussion. A lot of people showed up. It's good to see some interest in that. Could be a real game changer for up here. And then on another front, I attended a joint Climate Action Zero Waste Council Committee meeting at Metro. So the Climate Action Committee is a bigger committee than the Zero Waste Committee that I sit on, and we're sharing ideas of how to reduce, reuse, reduce waste overall. It was more of a workshop than a meeting. It was quite interesting. And that's what I've been doing the last 2 weeks.
Councilor Carr.
Thank you, Mayor McKim. A couple of things, the Easter egg hunt. It was quick. Boy, they came in, they registered, they got their candy, they left, which was actually great. It was cold out there, but Brooke's first big event, and she did a great job, and it was very well attended. That was great. A couple of things. The Mental Health Task Force, I think I've spoken about that before. We are on hiatus, and we had our appreciation lunch, and we're not going to stop the committee. We're going to just take a break, and we will reconvene in about 6 months when we can get another Foundry update. So I'm sure then things will pick up again. We also will be on the watch for other projects, and interestingly enough, something came up today that I was at the table with my homelessness hat on, but it has now, I believe, shifted to a municipality thing. So I'll just give you a brief outline, and then we'll talk more about it because it's very exciting. It's a pilot project that is called PACT, and PACT is Peer Assisted Care Team. And what that is a community-driven, person-centered response to non-aggressive behavior where someone is unsafe. So it would be a team of a mental health professional and a peer, and it is already in play. Northwest Vancouver have a team, Victoria has a team, and New Westminster has a team, and they're going to start 3 more teams. So I was on a call today with Councillor McCura from Port Coquitlam, Councillor Hodge from Coquitlam, and Councillor Lubeck from the City of Port Moody, as well as CMHA people who they are the funders, and they are spearheading this. So I don't know where it's going to go, but I feel like we have a good case being 5 municipalities. So I shifted out of my homeless task force role and jumped into my councillor role, and they'll be releasing shortly how to put in an expression of interest. And quite honestly, what municipality would want to be involved? So we want to meet and strategize how we can present ourselves better and be one of the 3 pilots for this. And I think they'll only do 1 more in the metro area. The other 2 could be in the little quieter regions. So I'll keep you posted on that. And I'm also going to bring that to the mental health task force table because it's a very good time for us to reconvene, even though that is a school district-led initiative. I think it's a good, and it's not just going to serve homeless population, it's going to serve everyone. So it will be collaborative, but I think it's great that we have right now 4 municipalities, and I don't know why Bill Carroll would want to be involved. So I'll keep everyone posted on that. The last thing I want to talk about is the ICON workshop, which was very, very well attended and very well done by the ICON group. We had a great turnout of both residents from Vancouver or from Anmore, as well as neighboring municipalities. Lots of new faces that we haven't heard or seen come to council meetings, so it was really a good vibe in the room, and I ended up mostly doing eavesdropping. I didn't get a really good look at all of the storyboards because I was listening to all of the questions that were coming in, and they were great questions, like very passionate, legitimate, willing to learn. It was very good. It was a good day, but what mine, as a second term, but this is all very new to me, my question is, like, what now? You know, we're entering a whole new territory for the village. We've never done anything like this before. So I'm just unsure of what happens next. There was a storyboard with the plans, and May of this year, so 2 weeks from today, it's already May, there will be an OCP, a request for an OCP amendment. I'm not even sure exactly how that looks or what that looks like, but considering it's coming up quickly, I don't know, maybe someone else is familiar. I've talked a little bit to others, but what's the process that we do? Like, what happens? They'll come, they'll present. I'm not sure what is next, and I don't know how we find that out, what we do. I guess it's a mayor question, a staff question.
I can take that.
From my perspective, we have to, I didn't go. I wasn't at the thing, so I don't know what was presented. I would imagine that there would have to be some sort of formal application, would have to come into the village, which would engage council, and then we as a council have to then direct staff as to what we want, or what we want to process. So my only worry right now is that we are under the guise that we're down 2 people. So I'm wondering, maybe Chris could speak to that a little bit.
Sure. So in most municipalities, they typically will have a process in place. They'll kind of say the requirements, which are the minimum requirements to receive an OCP amendment led by an external body compared to the municipality. So in Anmore's case, we don't really have that because we've never really faced it before. So the applicant has the right to make a request, and right now it'll be up to the proponent of what information they provide at this point in time, unless we want to get out in front of it and say these are the requirements of an OCP amendment.
I guess another thing to add is, yes, ICON will be coming forward, but we've all had conversations with the Hillside group, so we have that coming up. Is there a value to let the proponent know what we expect? Is there?
I would say the proponent would say yes to that question. It's one of those things of transparency, really, of trying to do business. It's easy to do business once you know what the hoops are you need to jump through. Right now, proponents don't really have those hoops to jump through. They should know in the dark right now what we might want. And so it's more of a policy guide to say, here's the minimum requirements. It isn't the be all and end all. As a council, you might come forward and ask for something in addition to what was received as well.
What the suggestion, maybe just to move this forward, Mr. Boyd, what about in the coming weeks? Like I said, we know that you guys we're behind. We don't have a we do have an improving officer now, who's got appointed, which is Mr. Boyd, because our building inspector retired a couple weeks ago, and we're waiting still for our corporate secretary to arrive, and that's going to be in May. So why don't, in the next coming weeks, maybe just start jotting down some things, and what you noticed with other municipalities, and kind of bring it to the council. Go ahead, Isabella.
Thank you, through the chair. Should council wish to have staff sort of review procedures, then certainly through recommendation, that's something that staff could review and report back to council on the recommendations, and that would then sort of formulate that application process document.
Mr. Councilor Karen. You know, it's high time we have a process, not just around OCP amendments, but around all things relative to development. It's very difficult for individual landowners. I'm not just talking about large companies like Icona or even the group on the hillside, but even for individual landowners. It's pretty hard to come in with any kind of a creative proposal. We've said on record many times, we're not really fond of RS1 development. It's not efficient. It's not good for the village long term. We want something more. We want to see sustainable housing. We want to see housing alternatives, et cetera, et cetera. And then we don't tell anybody what that looks like. I find that really backwards. So, to your point, Ms. Albrecht, I think we should have a process. Every municipality surrounding us has one. You can go online, which I did, and you can read them. They're very straightforward, very simple. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can take a framework of the one we like the best and Anmore-ize it. I don't see it as being, unless you guys tell me something different, I don't see it as being super labor intensive or sucking all our resources. It's just not fair to landowners. And again, I'm excluding Icona and Hillside, and I'm talking in general sense. We need to be fair to everyone that wants to come and present something to us. Instead of doing what we did, I remember years ago with Bellaterra, they would bring a proposal and we'd say, we don't like that. And then off they would go with no guidance about what it was we might like, and come back and we'd go, oh, we don't like that. And that was a 6-year process. It's not right. So if there's some kind of a motion or something, I would be in favor of directing staff.
Through the chair, I think that it would be appropriate in this case, should staff or should council want staff to move forward, to come forward with a motion. I could suggest one, or if somebody has something in mind, I'm happy to.
Well, you probably could suggest something better than I could, but I can't see a downside to starting a conversation and getting the process in place so that you can put pen and paper and get something ready.
So then perhaps the recommendation, and of course feel free to wordsmith or change that council could direct staff to review recommended procedures and report back to council on recommendations for an application process and criteria for proponent-led OCP amendment.
Can we just move that?
You may.
Yeah, moved, seconded. Any discussion? Councilor Richardson.
Okay, so I'm very aware that we're short-staffed at the time, so it's probably an inconvenient time to be doing this. I also recognize that in November of 2021, Icona also said they were coming with something. I think there was a letter or something that showed up. Was anything done then for a process at all?
Not at that point in time, no.
So why now? And my understanding there's still RS1 application on the books, is there not?
Yes, it's a subdivision application on the books.
So do they have to stop that?
No, I mean, the subdivision process can run in tandem with an OCP amendment. They have the right, because they already have the rezoning on their land to proceed with a subdivision that's in accordance with our zoning plans. Yeah.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, since everything's coming up, you know, I've talked to the hillside people as well, talked to everyone. Obviously, there's some big changes potentially coming. Another thing I was thinking, the OCP is maybe every 10 years. Council's every 4 years. Every 4 years, council comes up with a strategic plan that doesn't necessarily align with the OCP. You know, there's things that we want in our OCP or in our strategic plan that aren't necessarily even allowed for or addressed in the OCP. So they kind of conflict. But I understand you're not going to do the OCP every 4 years, so maybe having a policy, that's the logical starting point, is you know, when somebody comes with an innovative, hey, look, I've got a really good idea how to address your, you know, more affordable housing, and it's financially sustainable. It's like, you know, some great ideas come out of private industry, not always government. So having a process in place that, you know, says to, as to Councilor Trowbridge's point, anybody who, you know, wants, you know, feels that we have an appetite for an OCP amendment and something different, I think it should be easily accessible. So I think this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm not adverse to it. I guess I'm just worried about the manpower and the challenge that we have right now, just keeping what we have going right now. And like I said, I don't mind. I would vote in favor of getting some sort of a template, a generic template, but I think the timing right now, I would feel much more comfortable if we had a corporate secretary in place to be able, because I don't want to be overwhelming. I already know the challenges that we have right now. Ms. Elmer?
I think we could certainly come back with some recommended procedures and get some guidance from council on those procedures in order to formulate the larger document. I think that that's something that, and Mr. Boyd can correct me if I'm misspeaking, but I think that's something that's not as time intensive. So I think that's something that could be brought back to council fairly quickly, and then work on developing the broader document.
So without a resolution, can we just give direction to staff at that point, just to bring that back?
I think that the motion is on the floor now.
Motion is on the floor. That compromise that you're talking about makes sense to me, because I'm not using the right terminology, but it gets it on the books. To Councillor Richardson's point, we've had a couple of false starts at this, and we need to accomplish something. So as long as it's not like I'm insensitive to staff. I mean, I believe in just getting a bigger whip. But if you guys can bite off the chunks and chew it and digest it, I'll consider that you know better. And if you think you can do that, it makes sense to me to get started.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Was there any other council reports or?
Yeah. Just briefly, I think it's all been said, but I was not at Easter. And I regret that, but I was unavailable. But I did go to the open house with Icona, and I too had my hearing aids turned up and was listening, and it was surprisingly positive. You know, I can't put a percentage to it, but I would say the vast majority of the comments I heard were positive. What was also really heartwarming is that individuals who would not necessarily be supportive of much of anything changing are asking really respectful, good questions, and that's nice to see. So I found it a rewarding afternoon.
If we could, I just want to go back to the mayor's report because I'm on some painkillers right now and I forgot to read my speaking notes before we play the video. So I'm sorry, but it's all right. I want to do them now because it may help a little bit with what you've seen. As the first purpose-built civic building in our community, the Anmore Community Housing Milestone Project we want to celebrate. Part of this involves marking the occasion by documenting the steps leading up to the approval of the hub construction and celebrating together at various stages, such as the groundbreaking event we held last year. One of the ways we've documented this momentous occasion for our village is through a video that highlights some of the history of the past village halls and the steps we took to plan for and create a building where we will be able to work, gather, and celebrate. We're also able to recognize the contributions of this project, the project team who took the initiative to pivot and make changes to address the impacts of inflation and an unpredictable construction market so that we could deliver the project on budget. I'm happy to announce that we were able to share this video with you tonight as we mark another key milestone in the construction. The roof framework structure is up, and we will be adding the exterior walls and finishing the roof in the coming weeks. It's going to look more like a building very, very soon. Also, before we watch the video, or now that after we watch the video, my thanks go to Bruce Hitchin, an Anmore resident who filmed and produced the video for us, as well as the Anmore residents who took the time to share their thoughts on this project, Aaron Smurthwaite and Gina Campbell. Thank you all. Okay, move on to the CAO report.
Thank you. So I just wanted to firstly let everybody know that utility bills have been generated and will be out in the mail this week, so look for those to be coming out, and we will be posting reminders on due dates for those as well. The scholarship applications are open right now until May 7th. So information about the scholarship opportunities available on the village website and at the village hall. Staff should be completing water main flushing this week. Yesterday I met with some representatives from BC Hydro regarding the Bunsen Lake reservation system, and they are going ahead with the system again this year with some improvements and updates, so you can look for information coming out from BC Hydro probably in the next week or so, and they will be implementing the reservation system as of May 15th this year. So watch for that, and the village will be reposting that information as we get it in from BC Hydro. Also, as Mayor McEwen alluded to, we are making some progress with some of our staff vacancies. We will be having our manager of corporate services joining us early in May. Additionally, with the departure of Mark and Greg, we currently have a plan checker who has been working remotely for the village, doing some plan checking. He also is a building and plumbing inspector, and he will be sort of filling in the gaps on continuing with the plan checking and doing some building inspections over the next while. And we've been communicating with our builders in the building community and those that have permits on how to get set up for inspections and keep the process moving along for everybody. And lastly, our approving officer vacancy has been filled by council earlier this evening as well, and Chris Boyd will be taking over that role temporarily, I believe, and with support from his team at ISL, so we're very grateful to have him again help us out when we are in need. So thank you for that. That's it for me.
Good, thank you. We have the information as the draft finance committee meeting minutes for the meeting held on March 9th, minutes of the public hearing held on April 4th, some general correspondence, board and brief. Open it up quickly to the public question period. Public is permitted to ask questions for 2 minutes. Please. If we could just keep it to the village business would be great as well.
I have basically 2 sets of questions. You're at 1815A East Road. My first set of questions, among a number of questions to the mayor, is it possible that the reason behind the apparent lack of volunteerism in this village is because council itself seems reluctant to accept resident input? For example, at the last council session, mayor and staff appeared to poo-poo the idea of putting a heritage image on the PRV station at the corner of East Road and Thompson. It just so happens that Port Coquitlam has two similar but smaller boxes with heritage images along with the name of the photographer at the corner of Prairie and Fremont. Do we not actually have a possible surplus of images to put on that box? Is it not time to start thinking outside the box? There is, for example, the fairly recent photo of the former Montgomery homestead by Gaetan Royer with the stained glass window. And if that doesn't work, how about the image of the old Bunsen powerhouse on Indian Arm? It's impressive, it's historic, it's architecturally significant, which few have seen, and it's still very much in existence. And there's also a kind of symmetry between the idea of a pump house and the idea of a PRV station. If that doesn't work, how about asking our local photographer, Wolfgang Maurer, to put something together? And if Wolfgang is too modest, or if he sees himself in conflict because he lives in the area, how about setting up a village competition for the best and most apt photo? In other words, is there not a world of possibilities in Little Anmore? And so, if council wants to get more people involved in the village, why not let them get involved?
I believe the village has already started working on that.
Yeah, there's a commitment last meeting.
Yes, through the chair, we actually are going to be, as was mentioned last meeting, we are going to be undergoing a photo contest and other things sort of in conjunction with the hub opening and potentially some new social media channels for the village, so that will be
Sorry, this is with respect to the PRV, and we have 3 PRVs apparently. There was no mention of a photo contest at the last meeting, which I attended.
There was a conversation about having them wrapped, yes it was.
Having it wrapped, yes, in green, which is the standard protocol, but not for a photo contest.
Mr. Boyd, did you not, what is in the plan on that?
Your Worship, it can be wrapped. We can do whatever we like with the PRV. It just needs to have a good digital image taken. And in the past, municipalities have wrapped them and then stopped wrapping them because it becomes a very political situation. If someone likes the picture, doesn't like the picture, it becomes a big issue. So municipalities have moved away from wrapping them in the past and going forward because they don't want to have to decide on which photo goes where and then dealing with the consequences.
Thank you. Can I suggest you send that you're requesting as an email to council?
I'll do that. So, may I, with your permission, I'd like to follow up with it.
All these things could be put through in an email. We try and keep it to 2 minutes, so relevant business.
Relevant business, okay. It pertains to Anmore South, and full page article submitted by the Village of Anmore to the Anmore Times for the October 22 issue, 8 months ago. It was published in the Anmore Times, and here are the introductory.
I don't have that in front of me to even, you have a question asked? I'm sorry, I don't have that with me, so could you send an email off and I'll be able to answer you that one?
I'd like to ask a public question.
You could, yeah, I just don't look at how are we.
Okay, before the election, we had a last minute notice from Icona stating that they were going to have RS1 1-acre zoning, and that was published in the Anmore Times.
Who gave that?
It was the Village of Anmore in the Anmore Times. Posted it, I can quote it. I have the quotation right here. I read it in, if you allow me to read it, I can read it to you.
I just want to get on to the question, sorry.
The question is, well, essentially what we have had is a last minute update to the Anmore South development. There's one proposal before the election, and now there's a different proposal after the election. 8 months.
I'm aware of an actual proposal right now.
Just because you didn't attend the open house meeting. Others in council have.
The council has not received a proposal.
When the proposal comes through, And we know that the Icona Group is planning to introduce an amendment to the OCP and introduce urban zoning as opposed to rural zoning. So my question is, since it wasn't put to the electorate in the election, will there be a public consultation on the matter? Thank you.
Any proposal that comes forward will be extensive public consultation.
Thank you.
Nancy Maloney again, 1724 East Road. And with permission of the chair, I have an answer to something that was, well, this is a continuation of my earlier comment at the start of the meeting, but I also wanted to mention that because it's in my neighborhood, I'm actually almost positive that there is a speed bump at Strong and East Road.
It's a raised crosswalk.
Oh, okay, so there's a difference.
Official term.
Okay, that's
But
the
it's
official
not
term.
supposed to be raised, so please don't tell me.
But it is.
It might be an inch or two.
Last vehicle lost its trailer, actually going too fast over that, the trailer went.
It has done its work in slowing the traffic down.
Yes, and then there was a controversial issue of the three-way stop sign there, which was ultimately eliminated. Okay, but related to the ISL road safety study, and I assume it was because council gave no such direction. So I'm not going to repeat what I said before about the hazardous pedestrian issues related to especially crossing East Road when, as verified by the ISL report, there's lots of speeding on that road, and there's also sightlines where cars cannot necessarily see that a pedestrian is crossing the road. To give credit to the Anmore people and their Anmore South development, they actually are giving some consideration to Anmore South being a pedestrian-friendly community, which is somewhat lacking in the remainder of Anmore. Sorry, John, you're in pain?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yes. And so anyway, there was in the ISL road safety report, there was no consideration given to pedestrian safety, which I was actually hoping to see, especially the hazardous conditions for people who do not live near a crosswalk and must resort to crossing a sometimes very busy road, which can be quite hazardous, and like I mentioned before, and impossible for persons who would walk extremely slowly, like you would just get killed, is the reality of this. And I don't want to wait for that to happen before something is done. So my question is, could council possibly request additional comments on the pedestrian-related issue of road safety? And also related to that, and the other recommendations, will there sometimes be a public discussion about what recommendations council would be interested in implementing and what's are just for interest? And sorry, as an aside, this is actually not the first time I have brought this problem up. I talked to, previously, years ago, I talked to Julie about it. I talked to Mayor McEwen about it. And I actually attended a public safety meeting to bring this up. So it's not that I have not raised this issue multiple times, but that has resulted in actually no action, is my concern. So thank you.
Mr. Boyd, do you want to talk about the pedestrian safety aspect of your report?
Yeah, I mean, it was more about traffic analysis more than it was a pedestrian safety report. They're kind of two different things, but the comment would be regarding pedestrian safety. I didn't conduct the report, the independent engineers who conducted it will notice that there is no sidewalk on the northern side at this point in time, so their assumption would be, why would someone cross from one side to the other? I hear what the resident is saying, there is no facilities for pedestrians at all on that side. So a general comment that could be added to the report is, Anmore might want to consider constructing a sidewalk a continual sidewalk from all the northern side all the way along and provide crossing points at those certain locations, typically being at intersections.
Linda Weinberg, 2923 Fern Drive. A couple of questions regarding the same traffic study. The first was, I couldn't see whether or not the accidents were divided into daytime and nighttime. And because it also recommends lighted intersections. And so I think it's really important that we know, since we have a dark sky principle in Anmore, that we know whether these accidents are happening in the day or at nighttime. That's the first thing. Also, I think it's, I'm not sure whether we can do anything about it, but the children who are going to the school, who come up from the other side of East Road from the school, cross below the crosswalk. I go out almost every day at 9 o'clock, and there are children sometimes crossing the crosswalk, but if you continue on just before the curve into Port Moody, there is a sidewalk on the other side where children come from the other side and they cross just before that curve, and it's extremely dangerous. And I've stopped for children a number of times, but cars coming up the hill don't see them. And I think that's a really dangerous intersection, non-intersection. And I'm not sure what we can do about it, but something does need to be done.
Yeah, and it's been brought up before. It's actually in Port Moody, believe it or not. It's right out of our location, and it's the laziness. I wouldn't call them children as much as young adults who run across the road in front of traffic, and it's not good. And then they cut right through. Anmore Green Estates, which they're not happy. They kept breaking the fence down and that. So yeah, I've brought it up before, and I know that Neil Romer has brought it up to the Port Moody police and that, but they were thinking about possibly putting delineators across there, but they don't think it's that big of a problem. But I
was reminded this morning that I was going out. My second comment is toward the budget, and I didn't, when I saw the video or the screen, I saw something which I hadn't seen when I looked at the information on the agenda, which was that $75,000 is now back to produce an electronic sign at the beginning of Anmore, I guess, on either sunny side or East Road, which I just think is a total waste of money. One, for a number of reasons. One, I don't think we need it. The only people I can imagine what it would be good for that the signs don't already take care of. First of all, it's useless in an emergency because nobody is going down to look at those signs in an emergency. It might be good for, the question is, why is it there? Because when it came up last time, there was quite a community discussion and a lot of people were opposed to it, and I don't understand why it's back.
It's been a placeholder. It's never been eliminated, and I will tell you, I've heard from quite a few people and a lot of long-term residents, Pam Blackman being one of them, who are very, very supportive of it, want to know when they're coming. So, and
I don't know why Pam would be. She can't see it.
The proposed, wow. Yeah, I don't have anything more to say to that.
Quick question, Lisa Johnson, 180 Hemlock. It's very, very quick. If you can just try to clarify for me. So I can understand. I don't have all the proper terminology, but what you referred to this evening with not having the staff in place and a policy in place, does that slow down or does it expedite anybody that comes forward with an amendment change or a policy change or development change? So how I guess my question is, how do you deal with it without a policy in place and without the staff in place? Does that not all have to be in place?
Mr. Ford?
No, so a proponent has the legal right to request an OCP amendment.
Yes.
And so what I would say is, bad analogy, we're not driving the bus per se, we're reliant on the information they give us. And so what would probably happen is it does not expedite the process whatsoever. Because I might come forward with a report and council would say, well, we want to know about X, Y, and Z, why isn't this in the report? And my response would be,
How do you deal with it? Even as me as an individual, if I was to come forward with an infill proposal or something, you're short-staffed, how does that affect everything? Right?
so it's incumbent,
So
without
it's-
a staff, yeah.
Yeah.
It was unexpected, because you would have.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Move, seconded, all those in favor? Very nice. Thank you, everyone. And the video is going to be on the website?
I believe it's been posted to the website this evening, so, really nice to know.
Okay.